I need to tell someone what I did, and you're going to think I'm terrible, but there's something about being the perfect wife that nobody understands. For 8 years I was perfect. I mean it. I did everything right. I kept our home immaculate. I made dinner from scratch 6 nights a week. I remembered every single one of his coworkers' names and their kids' names and what they were allergic to for the Christmas party. I smiled. I supported. I wore the right dress to the right events and laughed at the right jokes. And the worst part? I thought I was happy doing it. But here's what I've never told anyone. What makes everything that happened next make sense in a way that'll probably make you hate me less, or maybe more, I don't know anymore. I wasn't just being the perfect wife because I loved Marcus. I was being perfect because I was terrified. Terrified that if I stopped being perfect, he'd see who I really was underneath all of it, and he'd leave. Just like my dad left when I was 7. Just like my first boyfriend in college left when I gained 15 pounds. Just like everyone eventually leaves when they figure out you're not actually special. If I don't tell this story exactly how it happened, you'll never understand why I said it meant nothing. But once you know what I know, you'll see why those were the worst possible words I could have chosen, even though at the time they felt like my only option. Everyone thinks they know what happened. My sister thinks I'm a selfish bitch who threw away a good man. Marcus's mother called me a whore in the Trader Joe's parking lot. Our mutual friends stopped inviting me to things and pretended it was because of scheduling conflicts. But the real story will change how you see everything, because what I did didn't start the night I slept with Connor. It started years before, in tiny moments I didn't even recognize as the beginning of my own destruction. I'm going to tell you everything, including the part where I knew exactly what I was doing and did it anyway. And the part that makes me look worst. I'm saving that for the end because you need to understand how I got there first. You need to see how someone can be so desperate to prove they're still desirable, still worth something, that they'll burn down their entire life just to feel wanted for 5 minutes. The first time I noticed Connor was at a work mixer Marcus dragged me to. Marcus was in pharmaceutical sales, and these things were always the same overpriced wine, undertipped bartenders, everyone trying to network while pretending they weren't networking. Connor worked in marketing for one of Marcus's clients. He was younger than me by maybe 4 years, which put him at around 28. He had dark hair that looked like he'd just run his fingers through it, and this easy smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. But that's not why I noticed him. I noticed him because when Marcus introduced us, Connor looked at me, really looked at me and said, "That's a beautiful dress. That color is incredible on you." And Marcus, my husband of 8 years, looked confused for a second, like he'd forgotten I was wearing a dress at all. It was such a small thing, meaningless really, but I held on to it like a life preserver. The second time I saw Connor was 3 weeks later at another event. Same circus, different venue. He found me standing alone while Marcus talked shop with some executives, and we ended up talking for 45 minutes. About nothing important, travel, books we'd read, the best pizza place in the city, normal stuff. But he laughed at my jokes. He asked follow-up questions. He acted like what I had to say mattered. I went home that night and Marcus was on his phone, scrolling through emails in bed. I lay next to him and said, "That Connor guy is nice." We had an interesting conversation about the Italian place on 7th. Marcus said, "That's good, babe," without looking up. Then he turned off his light and went to sleep. I stared at the ceiling for 2 hours. I need you to understand something before I go further. I'm not making excuses. What I did was wrong, and I knew it was wrong when I was doing it. But I also need you to understand that when someone stops seeing you, really seeing you, you start to disappear. And when you're disappearing, and someone comes along who makes you feel visible again, it's like oxygen. Over the next few months, Connor and I kept running into each other. Sometimes at work events, sometimes by accident at coffee shops near Marcus's office. We started texting, casual stuff at first. "Hey, there's a new exhibit at the art museum, thought you might like it." Or, "Remember that book you mentioned, just finished it, you were right." Nothing inappropriate, nothing I couldn't show Marcus if he asked, except he never asked. He never asked what I did all day, what I was thinking about, what I wanted. He came home, we had dinner, we watched whatever he wanted to watch, we went to bed. On weekends, he played golf. I went to yoga and brunch with my friends and pretended everything was fine. Just when I thought I'd become completely invisible in my own marriage, Connor texted me on a Tuesday afternoon. "I'm having the worst day, can I call you?" And I said yes. We talked for an hour. His mom was sick, and he was scared, and he didn't have anyone else he felt comfortable being vulnerable with. I sat in my perfect living room in my perfect house and listened to this man I barely knew share his deepest fears, and I felt more alive than I had in years. When Marcus got home that night, I tried. I really did. I made his favorite dinner. I wore the lingerie he'd bought me for my birthday last year. I initiated sex for the first time in months. And it was fine. It was fine. He said thank you after, kissed my forehead and fell asleep. I went to the bathroom and cried as quietly as I could. The texts with Connor got more frequent, more personal. He told me about his childhood, his dreams, the things that scared him. I told him things I'd never told anyone. About how I felt like I was performing my own life. About how lonely I was. About how I couldn't remember the last time Marcus had asked me a question about myself that wasn't logistical. Everyone online thought I was fine, but privately I was having panic attacks in the Target parking lot. I was lying awake next to my husband wondering if this was all there was. If I'd signed up for 50 more years of being a beautiful accessory instead of a person. Connor said he understood. He said his ex-girlfriend had made him feel the same way, like he was a resume instead of a human being. We bonded over our loneliness, and I thought that was all it was. Bonding. Friendship. Someone who saw me. I thought I was fixing things, but really I was building a bomb in the basement of my marriage and pretending it was a garden. The night it happened was supposed to be my anniversary. 8 years. Marcus forgot. Not in a cute, oh honey, I'm so sorry, let me make it up to you way. He genuinely forgot. He came home at 9 p.m. after drinks with clients and seemed confused when I asked if he remembered what day it was. I should have said something. I should have told him how hurt I was. Instead, I said it was fine. I smiled. I was perfect, because that's what I did. Connor texted me around 10. You okay? You've been quiet today. And I cracked. I told him about the anniversary. About the dinner reservation I'd made weeks ago that I'd canceled that afternoon. About the gift I'd bought, a first edition of Marcus's favorite book, that was sitting wrapped in my closet. About how I couldn't remember the last time my husband had touched me in a way that wasn't perfunctory. Connor said, you deserve so much better than that. And something in me broke. We met for coffee the next day, just coffee. I told myself it was just coffee, even though I spent an hour getting ready, even though I wore the dress that made me feel beautiful, even though I knew. Deep down, I knew. We talked for 3 hours, about everything, about nothing. His hand touched mine across the table and neither of us moved away. When we left, he walked me to my car, and we stood there in the parking lot, and the air between us felt electric. He said, I should go. I said, yeah, neither of us moved. And then we were kissing, and his hands were in my hair, and I felt like I was waking up after years of being asleep. It was desperate and hungry and everything I'd been missing. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. He said, come home with me. I should have said no. I should have gotten in my car and driven home and told Marcus we needed counseling, that our marriage was dying, that I was dying inside it. I should have done 1,000 things differently. But I said yes. I thought I was just trying to feel something, but really I was trying to prove I still existed. His apartment was small and messy in a lived-in way that felt honest. We didn't make it to the bedroom. We had sex on his couch like teenagers, frantic and urgent, and afterwards I lay there with my head on his chest listening to his heartbeat and feeling like the worst person alive and the most alive I'd felt in years at the exact same time. I cried. He held me. He said, we don't have to do this again if you don't want to. I said, I want to, and I meant it. I drove home at midnight. Marcus was already asleep. I showered in the guest bathroom and washed away the evidence and slipped into bed next to my husband like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just detonated our entire life. The affair lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks of sneaking around, of elaborate lies, of being two completely different people. I was perfect wife Sarah, who meal prepped and did Pilates and smiled at dinner parties. And I was Connor's Sarah, who laughed too loud and talked about her dreams and felt real. Just when I thought I could keep both lives running on parallel tracks forever, Marcus found a text. It wasn't even a particularly damning text. Connor had sent me a photo of a sunset with the caption, "Wish you were here." But it was 11 p.m. on a Thursday, and Marcus saw it light up my phone on the kitchen counter. He said, "Who's Connor?" And I watched 8 years of marriage flash before my eyes. I could have lied. I could have said he was a friend, a colleague, nothing important. But I was so tired of lying. So tired of being perfect, so I told him the truth, not all of it, but enough. I said I'd had an affair, that it was over, that it didn't mean anything. Those words, God, those words, it didn't mean anything. I said them because that's what you're supposed to say, right? That's what minimizes the damage. You fucked up, but it wasn't important, it was just physical, it didn't mean anything, so the marriage can still mean something. But Marcus just looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Not angry, broken, completely broken, he said. It didn't mean anything, I said. It was a mistake, it was stupid, I'm so sorry. Everyone thinks I was trying to manipulate him, but privately I was terrified he'd leave right then. I was scrambling, saying whatever I thought would make him stay, and that's what made everything so much worse. He said, "You're telling me you threw away our marriage for something that meant nothing." I said, "No, I'm saying it was meaningless. It was nothing, you're everything." He laughed, actually laughed. It was the worst sound I'd ever heard. He said, "If you can do that for nothing, then our marriage means nothing to you. If 8 years can be destroyed over something meaningless, then we were meaningless all along." I tried to argue. I tried to explain. I said all the things cheaters say. It was a moment of weakness. It didn't mean I don't love you. I was confused. I was lonely. I fucked up, but we can fix this. He said, "You were lonely, in our marriage, and instead of talking to me about it, you fucked someone else." And I thought I was defending myself when I said, "When would I have talked to you? You're never here. And when you are here, you're not really here. When's the last time you asked me how I was feeling? When's the last time you touched me like you actually wanted me?" His face did something I'll never forget. It crumpled and hardened at the same time. He said, "So this is my fault." I said, "No, that's not what I'm saying," he said. "You cheated on me and it's my fault because I didn't pay enough attention to you. Do you hear yourself?" And the thing is, I did hear myself. I heard how it sounded. But I also heard the truth underneath it that he was refusing to acknowledge. That our marriage had been dying long before I touched Connor. That we'd both been going through the motions for years. That I'd been disappearing and he'd watched it happen without saying a word. But you can't say that when you're the one who cheated. You lose the right to point out anyone else's failures the second you become the villain. Marcus slept in the guest room that night, and the next night, and the one after that. I thought I was giving him space to process, but really he was already gone. The next week was horrible in ways I couldn't have imagined. We were polite to each other, devastatingly polite. "Could you pass the salt? I'll be working late tonight. There's leftover pasta in the fridge." We were roommates who'd never liked each other, trapped in a house that suddenly felt enormous and suffocating at the same time. I tried to talk to him. Multiple times, I apologized, I cried, I begged him to go to counseling with me. He just looked at me with these empty eyes and said, "I don't think I can get past this." I said, "People do. People survive affairs, we can survive this." He said, "The affair isn't even the worst part. The worst part is that you said it meant nothing, that you risked everything we built for nothing. What does that make me? What does that make us?" And I finally understood. By trying to minimize what I'd done, I'd actually made it worse. I'd made our entire marriage meaningless in my attempt to save it. Just when I thought maybe we could still salvage something, his sister called me. Marcus had told his family. Of course he had. And his sister Rachel, who'd never particularly liked me, had thoughts, a lot of thoughts. She called me a slut. She said I never deserved Marcus. She said everyone always knew I was too focused on how I looked, too shallow, too selfish. She said she hoped I was happy now that I'd destroyed her brother. I hung up on her. But her words burrowed under my skin. Then my own sister called. Because of course Marcus had told his family, and his family had told mutual friends, and mutual friends had told my family. The humiliation spread like wildfire. My sister Emma was gentler than Rachel, but somehow that made it worse. She said, "Sarah, what were you thinking? Marcus is a good guy. You had a good life. Why would you throw that away?" And I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that a good life isn't the same as a happy life. That Marcus being a good guy didn't mean our marriage was good. That I'd been drowning for years and no one had noticed because I smiled the whole time. But I just said, "I don't know, I wasn't thinking." Everyone online thought I was fine, but privately I was unraveling. I stopped sleeping. I lost 12 pounds in 2 weeks. I'd go through my days like normal, grocery shopping, yoga class, coffee with friends who didn't know yet, and then I'd come home and collapse on the bathroom floor and sob. Marcus moved into his own apartment 3 weeks after I told him. He was calm about it, professional, even. He made a spreadsheet of our assets. He found a lawyer. He divided our life into neat columns and rows like it was a business transaction. The worst part was that he was still kind. He wasn't cruel or angry or vindictive. He was just done. And somehow that hurt more than if he'd screamed at me. The day he moved out, I tried one more time. I stood in our living room, my living room now I guess, and I said, "Marcus, please, can we just talk about this?" "Really talk?" he said. "What's there to talk about?" I said, "About why this happened, about what was wrong with us, about how we got here." He said, "I know why it happened. You were unhappy and instead of talking to me about it, you found someone else. And now you want me to what? Thank you for finally telling me there were problems. You had 8 years to tell me. You chose to tell someone else instead. I said, I tried to tell you, I tried so many times, but you never listened, you never saw me, and there it was, the thing I'd been holding back, the anger underneath all the guilt and shame. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. I never saw you, Sarah. My entire life revolved around you. You wanted the nice house, we got the nice house. You wanted to travel, we traveled. You wanted to quit your job and do freelance work, I supported that. What exactly did I not see? Me, I was screaming now, years of frustration pouring out. You saw the perfect wife I performed for you. You never asked what I actually wanted because I was too busy being what you wanted. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, that's not fair. You never told me you were performing. How was I supposed to know you were lying about being happy? And he was right. God, he was right. I had lied. Every time I smiled when I wanted to cry. Every time I said I was fine when I wasn't. Every time I performed perfection instead of asking for what I actually needed. I'd lied for 8 years and then blamed him for believing me. I said, you're right, I should have told you, I should have been honest, but I was scared. Of what? He asked. That if you saw the real me, you'd leave. He picked up the last box of his things. At the door he turned back. The irony is, I would have stayed for the real you. I loved you, Sarah, all of you. But I can't love someone who doesn't exist. And I can't stay with someone who threw away something real for something that meant nothing. Then he was gone. I thought I was just having a breakdown, but really I was finally breaking open. The next few months were brutal. The divorce was quick and clean, no kids, minimal shared assets, both of us just wanting it over. I moved to a smaller apartment across town. Most of our mutual friends chose him, which I understood but still hurt. My family tried to be supportive, but I could tell they were disappointed in me. I saw Connor once more, about a month after Marcus moved out. He texted asking how I was doing. I met him for coffee, thinking maybe there was something there, something that could justify what I'd destroyed. But sitting across from him, I felt nothing. No electricity, no spark. He was just a nice guy who'd been available when I needed to feel wanted. The affair hadn't been about him at all. It had been about me and my fear and my desperate need to prove I was still desirable, still worth something. I said, I'm sorry I dragged you into my mess. He said, I knew you were married, I made my choices too. I said, did it mean something to you, what we did? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, honestly, I knew it wasn't going anywhere. I liked you. I liked spending time with you. But I knew you were using me to avoid dealing with your marriage. So even Connor knew. Even he could see what I couldn't see myself. I said, why didn't you stop it? He shrugged. I was lonely too. Sometimes people use each other, that's just how it goes. We parted ways and I never saw him again. Just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, I found Marcus's engagement announcement on Facebook. 8 months. 8 months after our divorce was finalized, he was engaged to someone new. Her name was Jenna. She was pretty in a natural, effortless way. In the photos, she was laughing, no makeup, hair messy. Marcus was looking at her the way I'd always wanted him to look at me. I spent 3 hours scrolling through her profile like a masochist. She was a physical therapist. She liked hiking and craft beer and indie music. She posted silly selfies and memes and didn't seem to care about being perfect. She was everything I'd pretended not to be, and Marcus looked happy, really happy. Not the comfortable, content happiness of our marriage, but something bright and alive. I closed my laptop and cried until I threw up. My therapist, yes, I finally got a therapist, said it was good that Marcus found happiness. That it meant what happened wasn't a waste, that we both got to learn and grow and find what we actually needed. But here's what I've never told anyone. What I'm telling you now, I don't think Marcus found someone better than me. I think he found someone more honest than me. Someone brave enough to be imperfect. Someone who didn't perform, and that's what I can't forgive myself for. Not the cheating really, but the years of lying. The years of being so afraid of being left that I never gave Marcus the chance to love who I actually was. Everyone thinks I'm the villain in this story, and I am. I made the worst possible choices at every turn. I cheated. I lied. I blamed everyone but myself. Truth is, I didn't just destroy my marriage the night I slept with Connor. I destroyed it every single day I pretended to be someone I wasn't. Social media shows me living my best life now, new apartment, new job, new friends. I post photos of myself traveling, trying new restaurants, taking up hobbies. Everyone thinks I've moved on, that I'm thriving post-divorce. But privately, I'm still that woman standing in her perfect living room, disappearing in plain sight. I've been on dates. Them were fine. One guy was actually really great, funny, kind, attentive. On our 3rd date he said, "You're amazing, I can't believe you're single." And I felt it starting again, that performance. That instinct to be what he wanted instead of who I was. I went home that night and didn't text him back. I'm not ready. Maybe I'll never be ready. because I still don't know who I am when I'm not performing for someone. I still don't know what I want when there's no one to want it for. I thought sleeping with Connor was about feeling desired, but really it was about feeling real. For 6 weeks I got to be messy and complicated and human instead of perfect. And it was so fucking stupid because I could have been those things in my marriage. Marcus might have even loved me more for it, but I was too scared to find out. The worst truth I've been avoiding this whole time, the thing that makes me look absolutely terrible, is this: I'm not actually sorry I had the affair. I'm sorry I got caught. I'm sorry I hurt Marcus. I'm sorry I destroyed something that, if I'd been braver, could have been real. But those 6 weeks with Connor, they were the first time in years I felt like myself. And I hate that. I hate that it took betraying someone I love to remember I was a person underneath the performance. Does that make me irredeemable? Probably. But it's the truth. My therapist says I'm making progress. That recognizing these patterns is the first step. That learning to be honest, even when it's ugly, is how I'll eventually have real relationships. Maybe she's right. Maybe someday I'll meet someone and be brave enough to be imperfect from the start. To say I'm lonely instead of smiling. To admit when I'm unhappy instead of pretending. To risk being left for who I actually am instead of guaranteeing it by being someone I'm not. But right now, I'm just trying to figure out who that person is. I saw Marcus one more time, about a year after the divorce. We ran into each other at a bookstore. It was awkward and painful and weirdly normal all at once. He looked good, happy. He was buying a cookbook. He never cooked when we were married, and he seemed lighter somehow. Less burdened. We made small talk. How's work? How's the new place? Generic bullshit that hurt because we used to tell each other everything, or at least I thought we did. Then he said, "I hope you're doing okay, Sarah. I really do." And I believed him. That was the worst part. He actually meant it. I said, "I'm sorry for everything, for not being honest, for hurting you, for all of it." He said, "I know, and I'm sorry too, for not noticing you were unhappy, for letting us get comfortable instead of staying connected. It wasn't all on you." It was the kindest thing he could have said, and it destroyed me. I said, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I just told you how I felt instead of?" He was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes, but I think we were both hiding from each other in different ways. Maybe it needed to end how it did." Then his phone rang. He glanced at it and smiled in a way he never smiled at me, and I knew it was Jenna. He said, "I should go. Take care of yourself, okay?" I watched him walk away, and I thought about all the versions of us that could have existed if I'd been braver, if he'd been more present, if we'd both been more honest. But we weren't. And now he's building an honest life with someone else, and I'm here, still trying to figure out how to build an honest life with myself. That's the part nobody tells you about infidelity. It's not just about the betrayal, or the broken trust, or the sex. It's about looking in the mirror and realizing you don't know the person looking back. It's about understanding that you destroyed something real because you were too scared to be real yourself. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. The affair, the divorce, all of it. The honest answer: I regret how it happened. I regret hurting Marcus. I regret not being brave enough to fix our marriage before burning it down. But I don't regret that it's over. Because staying would have meant continuing to perform, continuing to disappear, continuing to pretend. And I couldn't do that anymore. Even if leaving meant becoming the villain in everyone's story, including my own. So yeah, I cheated and said it meant nothing. And Marcus said our marriage meant nothing now either. And we were both right and both wrong in ways that don't fit into neat little boxes of who's the villain and who's the victim. The truth is messier than that. The truth is I was dying inside a marriage that looked perfect from the outside, and instead of asking for help, I set it on fire. The truth is Marcus loved a version of me that I'd invented, and I resented him for not seeing through my lies. The truth is we were both lonely together, and neither of us knew how to say it. And the real truth, the one I'm still learning to live with, is that sometimes there is no good guy in the story. Sometimes everyone's just doing the best they can with their broken pieces, and sometimes your best still isn't good enough. I'm telling you this now because I need someone to know the whole story. Not the version where I'm the cheating wife who destroyed a good marriage. Not the version where I'm the victim of emotional neglect who had no choice. But the real version where I'm both and neither. Where I'm just a flawed person who made terrible choices out of fear and loneliness and a desperate need to feel real. If you think that makes me terrible, you're probably right. But at least now I'm terrible and honest. And that's better than perfect and fake. At least I think it is. Most days.